Something I talk about a lot with other producers is how we can differentiate ourselves in, the growing world of music production and music producers becoming more of a regular thing. People can just download a DAW, pick up music, and just start producing on their own pretty easily nowadays. So part of the big conversation has been, what ways can we set ourselves aside or, kind of set ourselves heads and shoulders above the rest so that we can keep getting clients or get new clients or retain current clients? And honestly, a really big part of that is the speed at which you work. Being able to take an artist from rough idea to finished song over the course of maybe just a couple hours is going to set you apart majorly as a music producer. So in this video, I want to talk about 5 ways to be a faster music producer and do more for your artist in a shorter amount of time. And at the end of this video, I'm going to issue a challenge to you, the viewer, right now to push yourself to be a faster producer. And I'm going to give you a way to do that. So stay tuned till the end. Let's get right into it.
Hey, Drew, let's go.
Number 1 is knowing your shortcuts. This is a pretty common consensus amongst all producers. Even shaving off just a 1 second of time of something that you're going to do over and over and over and over again, you'll probably save 30 minutes of time over the course of a multiple hour session if something takes you just a little bit extra less time to do. So obviously making sure you know the simple basic ones like cut, copy, paste, duplicate, copy and drag, but also making sure that one's a little bit more curated to the softwares that you're using. Things like ripple delete, separate track, paste insert section, cascading outputs. And like I said, these are going to be a lot more specific to whatever DAW software you're working in. So make sure to take the time. And if you find yourself going up to that top menu bar and clicking something over and over and over again, write that shortcut down on maybe like a sticky note and stick it right in front of you and start really memorizing those shortcuts. Like if every time you have to make a new track in your DAW, you have to go up to the menu and find track and then go to new and add new and all of that kind of stuff. That's going to just take a little bit extra time rather than just knowing the shortcut and immediately being able to keep moving without having to take a second to stop and do all of that stuff. And this just isn't your DAW. This is also things like your vocal tuning software like Melodyne or Auto-Tune. They also have their own keyboard shortcuts that you will also need to learn. And if you're in there a lot, like if you tune vocals for people and you're in there a lot, you should really learn your Melodyne shortcuts on top of your DAW software shortcuts. All right, moving on to number 2, and this one I don't see being talked about enough, but it's having a really involved pre-production session. Pre-production is generally something that you do whenever you're having a conversation with your artist while you're prepping for them to come into the studio with you. And a lot of times this can just be kind of glossed over as far as just having conversation or getting to know your artist better, which you definitely should also do that. You should also make sure that you and your artist are on the same page for the direction of the project. This is going to save a lot of time and confusion on why you're trying to lead them a certain direction if that's not where they're headed and you don't understand that. Doing things like building a collaborative playlist like on Spotify or Apple Music of the sound that they're trying to achieve, especially on things like EPs or longer albums or multiple sets of singles. Having a playlist for that sound that they're trying to achieve is going to be a lot more conducive to you fully understanding the direction that they're trying to head. And then on top of that, even just doing something simple like discussing how the recording process generally looks, if they have any questions, maybe even trying to set goalposts of like pre-scheduled times for this day, we'd like to start on our tracking. And then maybe by this day on the calendar is when we start mixing and so on and so forth, so that they are pretty clear on the process of making a record with you. And going along with that, how payments should be made. Are you a half up front, half at the end guy? As the goal markers get met, they're paying in sections, maybe a quarter at a time? Are you a full up front or full at the end kind of person? Being pretty clear on how your payments work also prevents things like gumming up the works. So, if your artist thinks that they're fully paying you at the end and you expect them to pay when things are happening, as the progress of the album or EP kind of goes along, that's going to be a little more complicated to keep things running really smoothly. And once again, that's going to make things slower. And we want to be fast and efficient producers. All right, number 3 is a little more producer centric, and that is optimizing your workflow. And we kind of split this into 2 sections. We have the efficient setup and efficient workflow. So by efficient setup, I mean, what are the things that you do to make sure that getting things into the computer are as easy as possible? Having a mic always set up, ready to go to track vocals. Your guitars are tuned and set up and ready to go. Cables are, pre-ran if needed. If you're doing a larger setup with like drums and bass and guitars and multiple people playing at one time, do you have ways for them to easily communicate? Do you have ways for them to just get an idea, walk in, and you just hit record, everything's pre-routed, and you don't have to really think about all of that stuff? Minimizing a lot of that time will get you to making the music faster and letting the artist have more of a free-flowing mindset on, I have this idea, I want to hear what it sounds like, and you kind of shorten that feedback loop a little bit so that you can get across the finish line on a song a lot faster. This also includes things like having preamps or specific mics for specific kind of voices, printing EQs and compression on the way in to save yourself time later. All of these things are super important to speeding up your workflow. And the other half of this is efficient process, which is more inside the box type stuff. So having an efficient process to recording vocals. Do you playlist vocal tracks? Do you do it section by section? Is that artist dependent? Do you like them to take one long pass to kind of gauge where they're at in comfortability with the song and also to familiarize yourself with the song? For drums, do you tend to do section by section, one long take? Are you tracking with processing on? Or are you tracking pretty dry? All of these things you kind of have to think about beforehand, but as you're in here editing and setting up bus compression presets or master chain presets that you tend to start with, those things are going to get you to the end quicker because you're not going to have to worry about going and clicking and finding the right plugin and remembering what folder it's under and all of this kind of nonsense that, once you have a ton of plugins, it can get really confusing to find the right thing you're looking for if you don't know exactly where it's at. And both of those things are super important to optimizing the experience of the workflow. So making sure your artist can get from idea to printed as quickly as possible, and to make sure once you have that idea captured, you can edit it or process it however you need to get it sounding like a finished product a lot quicker. Number 4 is a little bit more nebulous, and it's something that when having these conversations with other producers kind of comes up a lot, which is being able to trust your ear and the decisions that you make, or having confidence in your taste. A really big part of artists choosing us as producers is the fact that they like the way that we hear things. And it's kind of really complicated and tied to us as people, but that is how we work. Mix engineers and producers are hired because the way that we hear things and the way that we make projects sound is what other people like. If other people don't like the way we hear things and the way our projects come out, then they're not going to hire us, which is fine. That's to each his own. But for me, I'm trying to make sure that I can have the best quality client experience as possible so that when a client hires me, we make a great record together. They walk away feeling like that was an incredible experience. And on top of that, they have a project that they can release that then helps their career go further down the line than they ever expected. So being confident in what you hear and your direction of your taste is massive, because if you are confident in those things, then making decisions become a lot easier for you, become a lot quicker. This kind of plays back to the pre-production session of you building a playlist, making sure you and the artist are on the same page as far as direction. If you understand and your taste understands the direction that the artist is trying to go, then when you get to things that are tough decisions on making a decision on a guitar tone or a drum sound or how to process these things, or maybe even a writing aspect of how a lyric needs to be, or a genre specific, mix choice. Having confidence in your taste to decipher what the artist wants and turn that into what you view as what they want in the end, that's going to speed up your productions and then also have a better end result because, like I said before, you can shorten the feedback loop. Having a shorter feedback loop is very important to the process of recording and producing an artist. If you make a decision, you want to make sure that as soon as you can, you get feedback from the artist so that they can, tell you if they like it or not. And if they don't like it, ultimately, we need to make sure that the artist falls in love with their projects. Before we get to the last way to be a faster producer and the challenge for this video for you guys, I posted on Threads to see what other producers in the space kind of were thinking about ways that they are faster as producers. So I asked, what music production techniques do you feel like made you faster in the studio? Ian Guthrie said, keeping a clean enough workspace, having go-to mics and equipment already patched and ready to go, and that goes for plugins as well. Overbuilding Pro Tools sessions because it's always easier to delete stuff you don't need than create new tracks and effects in the moment, and knowing your equipment and its limitations. Beats by Starcore says learning the DAW shortcuts makes your workflow so much faster. I 100% agree, hence number 1 in this. Catalyst Recording says trusting instinct, which is number 4, trusting your ear and your decisions and having confidence in your taste. Melvin Darrell says a few things that have made a difference for me in terms of speed: a good grasp of a few VST sounds and processing tools, a healthy habit of taking breaks instead of overworking, key commands for repetitive tasks, and confidence in producing intuitively. There's a couple more on there, and I'm gonna be asking questions for videos like this more often over on Threads. So if you want to, give me a follow at Music by Drew. That's on Instagram and Threads at Music by Drew. But lastly, number 5 in the 5 ways to be a faster producer is forcing time restraints. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. Firstly, it's making sure to lock in a hard deadline. This kind of goes back to the pre-production area, but when you're in that pre-production, making sure you're locking in hard deadlines forces everyone involved to have kind of a sense of a ticking clock, even though technically there's not. Now with label projects, there may be an actual ticking clock on the deliverables need to be sent out at a specific time. But, sometimes with more independent projects, you won't have that, but still having a deliverable date is good for the project in general because it gives a sense of urgency of we need to be done by this day so that we can be finished with the project. And then it also kind of prevents projects from taking a really long amount of time. But another way that you can do this is using something like the Pomodoro method, which if you don't know is setting a 25-minute timer and then working with a very intense focus for 25 minutes. And then when that timer goes off, getting up, removing yourself from your space, your workspace, and taking a 5-minute break. And it forces you to do something called a focus sprint. And that's exactly what I just described. It's you are hyper focused for 25 minutes on doing this task, and you are doing it as intensely as you possibly can, thinking about it and making sure that is the only thing. You're turning your phone off, setting this arbitrary 25-minute timer on, I have to finish this thing in 25 minutes or the world's going to explode or whatever. But at the end of that 25 minutes, then you get to take a break. It also forces you to take a break every 25 minutes, which for us as music people who rely on our ears to work is very important. We need to be taking regular breaks. So on top of having this focused sprint of 25 minutes, it also gives us a nice 5-minute break to make sure we're standing up, getting water, staying hydrated, walking around, making sure we're not just sitting like I am right now and being fully sedentary for hours and hours on end and not stretching our legs and cramping up and stuff. And then another way someone recommended me to try was turning on a YouTube video, if you have a secondary monitor or maybe like a TV behind, on the wall or something in your workspace, turning on a YouTube video and putting it as silent, maybe like a podcast that's kind of long, or maybe like a 30-minute, video on something that's just kind of in the background. You're not listening to it, it's just on. And as you hit play, you give yourself a ultimatum of, I want to be done with this specific thing by the time this video ends. Kind of similar to the Pomodoro method, to be honest, but it's using a visual aspect as well, kind of something ambiently in the background. So you're throwing it up and then you're saying, I found this 20-minute YouTube video. I'm going to try to finish and tune this entire lead vocal before the end of this video. Or I'm gonna edit all of these drums for this song by the end of this video. Or if it's a longer podcast video, I'm gonna edit every song for this EP by the time that this, 2-hour video is done or something. It's just a way to push yourself and set some sort of arbitrary deadline to get you in and focused a lot harder. And you'll find that a lot of times after doing it a lot, you do get faster. You do get better at doing whatever thing, whether it's vocal tuning or drum editing or whatever, mixing or something, that you do get better at doing things a lot faster the more you practice this. So I want to challenge you guys that are watching this right now. I want you to try this. I want you to force a time restraint for yourself, whether it's the Pomodoro method, which that's what I use. There's a ton of great Pomodoro apps. If you just literally, go to your app store, type in Pomodoro timer. There's a million of them that are pretty cool and stylized depending on what you're looking for. Or try the YouTube method and throw on a video in the background and work until that video is done, and give yourself a very focused ticking clock or, arbitrary time limit to do a thing. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I wanted to try to give something a little more producer focused that helps you guys become better producers. And I know I have a lot of producer artists on here that are self-producing or starting to work with other clients. This is going to be some ways I think that you can up your game, be better as a producer, provide more quality experience for your clients. And if you want to talk to me about producing your project, maybe you like the things that I said and you like the way I view these things, feel free to hit me up. Go to www.musicbydrew.com. There's a form on the bottom of that website that you can fill out, and we'll talk about your project. I'd love to chat about it, and we can make some awesome music together. Feel free to do that if that's something that you're interested in. If not, there's another video I feel like you might be interested in right over here that is going to give you a better view on how to be a better producer and make better music. So I'll see you in that video, and later.